think we refer to these Friday podcasts not as fuck around and find out, but more Friday afternoon fuck off. It's the same letters. We've just somehow rearranged some of the words there. Welcome to the Friday edition of Section 1904. Hopefully most of you are preparing for a long holiday weekend. It becomes a little longer. I've noticed lots of people just decide to mail it in. Wherever your office might be located, you're probably mailing it in here on a Friday. So maybe we can be part of your weekend commute. Hopefully everybody travels safe. We are starting our weekend off by not being unshowered and at our respective houses, but we've decided to take the microphones to Mason Ale Works in Barrio Logan. We're here. It's just past 12 o'clock. I'm Darren. He's John. And a happy holiday weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend, so we know what that means in and around San Diego and every place where people are listening to this podcast. Thanks for making us part of it. John, looking forward to it. Have you started mailing it in yet this weekend, or are you just on cruise control heading into a 3-day weekend, or what?
I'm always mailing it in, Darren. No, I'm hoping that everyone else is mailing it in so that there won't be any traffic on my drive home. I'm really looking forward to that. On the way down, you asked me how the traffic was on the way down. There was almost none, except there was a long line that I drove past of a bunch of people trying to get off on one specific exit. Would you like to guess which exit that was?
You're driving down the 15 freeway.
Driving down the 5.
Driving down the 5 freeway. So I'm going to guess that was Del Mar, the fair? Does the fair start?
I don't think the fair has started yet.
Okay.
I think Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, were people going to buy their meat at the market? What's that market you guys have up there? Seaside Market?
They were not. It was further south than that. It was the Garnett and Grand exit, because apparently people have already started flocking to the beaches of San Diego. I'm assuming that's why.
Well, the weather's nice. I will say I woke up this morning and, this is the time of the year. I know people hate the term May gray, June gloom, but it's a real thing. Yeah. I was driving home yesterday from Sequan, went out there to SDFC training. And it's amazing when you're on that 54 freeway, you're like, it's sunny out, it's beautiful out, can't wait to get home. And then as soon as you go on the 54 freeway and you're getting set to get on the 5 South, it's like, boom, you just get crushed with all sorts of clouds and the like. And, it did clear up, but it's clear. So hopefully it's a good weekend. Yeah. And, hopefully it's a nice, safe weekend for everybody as well. When does the fair start, by the way? I don't even know. It just always sounds like the kind of thing I choose to avoid. I'd rather go take the 15 freeway north just so I don't have to deal with people getting off Via de la Valle.
Looks like starts June 11th.
Okay, so we got a little bit of time. I think
that's a Wednesday, by the way.
Okay, well, good. Do you have any big plans?
For this weekend?
Yeah.
I have very little in the way of plans for this weekend. I think we're going to try and take the dog to Dog Beach, because I think after this weekend, the beach in Del Mar it's very weird. There's a beach in Del Mar that dogs are allowed off-leash basically until Memorial Day. And then from Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's shut down. No dogs, or at least no dogs off-leash. And then after Labor Day, it can start again. I guess protecting the tourists from the dogs in Del Mar. But so we're going to take the dog to the Dog Beach.
That's the one right by the Brigantine, right?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So going to take the dog to the Dog Beach. Going to get some stuff done around the house. Going to do a lot of cooking. And, I got a pool in the backyard. Probably spend some time in the pool, drink a beer or two. We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do love that. I know. See, my weekend's a little bit, I've got to play it easy today. I can tell my wife's ready to just go. She's ready to just turn off her computer, put her out of office on, and call it a weekend. And I'm not suggesting that she's being a bad influence, but she's being a bad influence. She's like, hey, what do you think later? We're going to go take a bike ride and we'll go get some food. I'm like, I think I have to prep for the LA Galaxy. We have an early game on Saturday, too, so that takes up a bunch of hours away from me in terms of my prep.
Yeah.
Because normally if it's a 7 o'clock game, at least I can get up. I can prep for 2-3 hours on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I don't really have that luxury. Now it's kind of get up, go. Got to go to Snapdragon Stadium. This game's going to kick off at 1:45 on San Diego Sports 760. And also on Fox. It's on Big Fox, Fox Deportes. So this will be a internationally televised game.
Still on Apple TV, right?
Still on Apple TV, yeah. But it is taking away a little bit from my prep time. The good news is it's a rematch, so I don't have to relearn or learn an entire club for the first time. As a matter of fact, I thought it was interesting that Galaxy started the same exact lineup, save for their starting goalkeeper against LAFC last week, that they did against SDFC in the season opener.
Yeah.
So I went and I still have those notes. I kept my board. So I looked at it. I was like, I could still use this. I'll just put in a couple of new notes about what the season statistics are. But after that, I'm going to be completely free to go. I think at about 4:00 tomorrow, you might hear a little bit of a little disruption in the San Diego ecosystem because
cry of freedom.
I will have nothing left to do. And just so everybody knows, we've decided we're probably not going to podcast on Monday with the holiday because you're going to be busy doing other things.
Yeah.
So we'll probably just get back with you on Tuesday. If that's good for everybody else, that's probably the way we're looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably write something for Monday. Like, there'll still probably be a front row seat. But, well, it's holidays, especially federal holidays, not a big day for podcast downloads. People are spending more time with their family. I got to do some parenting because my kid's school is closed. Speaking of tomorrow, not that it needs any extra boost because I saw a bunch of people already saying they're going to this. What I'm doing before the San Diego FC game tomorrow is actually kind of interesting. And we had talked about maybe making this podcast about mental health because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Our buddy Stephen Woods from the Ben and Woods Show put a thing on Instagram saying that he wants to start what I usually refer to as a men's group, almost a group therapy dynamic, right? Men get around. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable with each other. We share our emotions, our troubles. We try and help each other through crises or just give examples of hey, it's worked for me, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm part of like a men's group that meets every other month. I'm usually there up in North County. My friend Jonathan got me in on that. But I saw Woods was doing this, and he's doing it at actually a brewery tasting room that's around the corner from my house. And so I told him, I was like, I will be there. If you need any help or assistance from someone who's been a part of a group like this, like more than happy to do it. And then my wife this morning was like, how long do you think this is going to take? Because we're meeting at like 11 a.m. tomorrow. And sometimes these things, at least with my group, can go hours and hours. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, it can go an hour, it can go 4. And then I thought about it. I was like, nope, I'll be home for STFC. I'll be home at like 1:30 at the very latest. I will be home.
What if you're right in the middle of some sort of breakthrough?
Sorry, guys, I got to go.
Got to go. That's it. Got to wrap it up. I got to be on my way. It's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. Because I was taking Leah to the airport the other day when Woods made the announcement that he was putting this thing together.
Oh, he said it on the air.
He did.
Cool. I saw it on Instagram.
Yeah, he said it on the air. I was driving home from the airport, and I thought, wow, what a cool thing. What a cool thing that he's doing there. I think it's called The Work.
Yeah.
That, and Woods has been pretty open with
about it, going to therapy and
himself
all that, yeah.
and going to therapy and things along those lines. Pretty open book on the radio, which I can tell you is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And I'm not necessarily just talking about myself, but people that I've worked with that are struggling sometimes just put on their brave radio face and personality so that they can put that stuff off to the side, which oftentimes is what we say about sports, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about sports being this escape from the realities.
Distraction, yeah.
And there's like a bunch of different ways of looking at that. Yesterday on yesterday's podcast, and I understand not everybody is going to be drawn into a podcast or a conversation about Tottenham Hotspur soccer and what it was that they did in the Europa League, but we had a conversation with a guy that you and I have known forever.
Yeah.
His name is Ben Foreman, and we were talking about the role that sports plays in our mental health.
Yeah.
And sometimes for worse, but oftentimes for better, about things being a community shared experience. That was not part of the actual interview. That is something that we talked about off the air with Ben when we were recording this. But I still thought it was relevant. As a matter of fact, I was on Ben and Woods this morning. And, they promoted that I was on and posted it on Twitter and just said, coming up at D. Smith Show, whatever. And there was one person who responded back to Ben and Woods and myself. My phone isn't loading right now. Her name was Emily. She's like, sorry, guys, I can't today. I just have to skip it. And I thought, man, I know Emily to be a big-time Padre fan.
Yeah.
The way the Padres are playing, I guess, has had that kind of impact. It's just always a fascinating conversation about, the role that all of these things play in our own mental well-being. Friends of mine checking on me literally about the Knicks.
Like they're legitimately worried about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing that sort of stuff. Not to suggest that one didn't really bother me the other night. I'm pretty good about compartmentalizing that stuff. I think a lot of that comes from being in this business as long as I've been.
Sure.
Because, and I'm not a great fan, and I've learned that I'm not a great fan, that I take some of this stuff a little bit too seriously, and I've learned to maybe remove myself from the extreme emotions of sport. But from time to time, it definitely does pop up. But I always think that's, especially as you said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, even though it's coming to a close. I don't know why it's only 1 month, but with about a week to go, I do think that's part of it. Like, you get the sense, and it's easy to sort of laugh at it, but, even a 6-game losing streak for the Padres has affected people, has had an impact on people here in May. So, it's all part of the conversation. But yeah, good on Woods, man. And I did not know that you were going to attend that.
Yep.
I was going to ask if you had heard of it, but
yeah,
I'm glad and he even said too, I think when he announced it on the air, he goes, if one person shows up, cool. He goes, maybe it's just me by myself for 2 hours. That's cool too. Maybe 100 people show up.
Yeah.
But I think it's a pretty brave thing to put out there. And, he had even said, listen, sports radio, and I say this as somebody who did it for 20 plus years, it is often fueled by testosterone.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I'm sure I'll promote this on social media, and somebody will be like, oh, that's gay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for vulnerability on sports radio.
Yeah, even this morning I was telling a story about Mike Ivaris having everybody go to Savasana at the end of training, and I'm sure somebody would be like, that sounds like a bunch of woke bullshit, but still, it's not, for starters.
Whatever works, works.
Yeah, and also it's a good idea to say the lives of professional athletes are often pretty chaotic, and it's okay for guys to spend 5 minutes not distracted or not focusing on training, not focusing on their phones, not focusing on everything else that they got going on in their universe and family and everything. Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes right here to sit in Savasana at the end of a hard training session where you just are focused on yourself, where you're just yourself, you're quiet, you're not distracted, and make sure that you find time. I hope you're doing this away from the training facility, but I don't know that you are. So
not.
I'm going to insist that you're going to do it here.
Yeah.
That's another great example of a coach who understands mental health, who understands the lives of professional athletes, for whatever you want to say about pro athletes. They got it so great. They make so much money, or it's just soccer. Here's a guy who's like, I have to find time to make it part of their routine that these guys can be completely without distractions, for 5-10 minutes, just with themselves, being centered, being grounded. I have to make sure that I'm doing that sort of stuff because I understand how chaotic their lifestyles can be. I think it's a great thing.
I think it's a totally great thing. And on the category of Woods and on us and what we're doing here, I think what is really going to be an important role in media, even sports media going forward, especially audio media, a little bit video media, is authenticity. And authenticity means, not looking at sports as an aggro macho thing. It's just a human thing that we all experience in different ways. Women and men and straight people and gay, there are people of every category that love and experience and emote due to sports. And I think the more we show ourselves to be human beings, I'm talking about you and I specifically, the more the human beings that are on the other side of this, that listen, that are in our Discord server, that are emailing us, they understand how authentic we're being, and they understand that the words we're saying, we're not saying to try and boost a rating. We're not saying to try and get an emotion out of you, the audience. These are actual authentic thoughts. And look, to be honest, I agreed to do Woods posted the thing on Instagram 3 or 4 days ago, and I immediately, commented, I'll be there. I texted him about it. And yesterday, I had a really hard day. Personally, I had a really hard night emotionally because, I don't know how many people know about this. Back in the Padres hot tub day, I kind of started a mental health journey at one point when I was 37 years old, right? And anyone I've talked to, my previous therapist, my current therapist, people in the industry that I've talked to, they all say you should have been in therapy 20 years earlier, but I'm glad you're in therapy now. But I have a father who's a drug addict. He's been a drug addict since he was 15 years old. He was a heroin addict before I was born. He was a cocaine addict when I was a kid. eventually he turned to meth, and I have a mom who's been an on and off alcoholic for most of her life, and I am going to visit my father, my kind of annual trip to Florida to visit my father and my uncle, and I got a call from my uncle last night, and he was like, "Hey, I need to tell you something so that you're not surprised when you see it." He said, "Your father's 2 front teeth have fallen out, and the rest of his teeth have turned brown." Do you know why, Darren? Because he's back to smoking meth. And if his brothers weren't paying for him to live in an apartment, he would be homeless. He'd be a homeless meth addict. Right now, he's just a meth addict that has an apartment that's paid for. And I'm going in 2 weeks, and I'm like, when he had all of his teeth, it was easy to kind of look the other way and be like, oh, he'll figure this out. And now I'm like, am I going out there to see my dad for the last time before he dies? Of his own doing, but am I going out there to see him for the last time before he dies? And that's like, I've already had a complicated relationship with my father, but that's a whole other, and like literally last night I was like, should I call my therapist? Like these are big, complicated feelings to work through. And then I was like, I got that thing with Woods on Saturday. I could just work that through in a group setting. And so like, if you are a person, you probably have some sort of complicated issue, come and talk about it. Be vulnerable with us. It's better in a group. It's better when you feel like you're not alone when you're talking through that shit.
Yeah, and it it's not the people talk about safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
You sort of see people joking about that a little bit on Twitter. Hey, sports fans, come here. This is a safe space, right? And it's like the least likely safe space.
Yeah.
Social media, like not on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's absolutely the last place that I would consider a safe space.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this is one where, and I thought Wood said it really well. It's like, we're not going there to talk about the Padres, unless, you really feel strongly that this is impacting your ability to enjoy your life.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't want to talk about the lineup. We want to talk about real things, like real issues, like what it was that you just mentioned there. You and I could probably do a whole podcast just on our relationships with our dads.
Someday we will.
I mean, because a lot of this sounds very, very familiar to, visiting Florida and thinking it's probably the last time, only it's not. And now even this morning, Lee and I were talking about she's got to be in Florida for work over the next month or so. So we were talking about figuring out a way to get out there to see my dad, who's in assisted living right now, who has been through a ton. He's absolutely been through a ton. So, I mean, this is life. This is real life. The people that you listen to, the people that you watch play sports sometimes, which is why it's always something I consider what's going on in a person's private life. And I know for a lot of listeners, they get paid a ton of money, so it just makes them avatars. It doesn't make them real people. Go out there, perform. You're making $30 million a year. Go out there and figure out a way to be productive. But what John just said there, and whatever that might mean for you, these are people who deal with similar stuff.
Yeah,
and
they all have family.
They put themselves out there and present themselves as larger than life and indestructible figures because you have to have that mindset to get where they are professionally. But I'm sure there's a ton of vulnerability going on with some of your favorite athletes there as well.
That's why I never understood teams don't want to draft Shedeur Sanders because they're worried that Deion is going to get involved and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do you understand how many parents of these players that are entering the NFL are such worse influences in their life on a regular basis than Deion Sanders?
Yeah, they will bleed them dry financially. Deion is not going to do that with Shedeur at all. He might be a person whose opinion you might have to answer to at some point in a press conference. But in terms of actually making the person a worse human, I don't think you're going to have to worry about
making their life harder. He's not going to make his son's life harder.
Right. No doubt about that. So, where's your dad live in Florida?
Both of my uncle. My dad has been living with my uncle for the last 6 or 7 years, and only recently, which is why things are progressing very quickly now. About a month ago, he moved out into his own place, but they both live in Daytona Beach area.
Okay.
Space Coast.
So what do? Fly to Jacksonville?
I fly to Orlando.
Okay. That's an easy one. That's a direct flight. You can find some flights there on Southwest Air. That's always my dad's in Port St. Lucie, so it's about equidistant from Fort Lauderdale and Orlando. Yeah. So it's always a question of what's just more convenient for us. This morning we were actually looking at red-eye flights because there's an SDFC game on a Saturday. We were going through, could I make a red-eye flight for a 7:30 kickoff? Could I make that flight? I was like, yeah, Adrian can do the post-game show. I got to go.
Like a 10:30 flight, something like that?
Something like that.
I hate flying east because you just lose the whole day if you don't do the red-eye flight.
We saw one flight to Florida that was like 12 hours. I was like, 12,
Jesus.
Like, I could fly to Spain for that. Literally could fly to Spain for that. But there used to be a really good non-stop Southwest flight, San Diego to Orlando, and then it would come back. And I would take that all the time, and they got rid of it. And so I think the last time I flew, I had a stopover in Dallas or something. And this time, our beloved Alaskan Airlines, they now have a direct flight San Diego to Orlando and Orlando back. So I get to fly out of Terminal 2. I'm very excited about that. By the way, I hope everybody's appreciating that here we are having this in-depth conversation where John in particular is opening up his personal family stories, and we have Earth, Wind, and Fire in the background. I hope everybody can appreciate the complexity of this podcast that John is telling you all about his dad's situation. And in the background, all I could hear is Fantasy from Earth, Wind, and Fire, which just is one of my favorite all-time jukebox songs. Absolute banger of a song if you're ever in a place and there's a jukebox and Fantasy is on. It always reminds me of my restaurant days. I'll skip the details about what we would be doing when we would be cranking Fantasy at 10 after we closed down the restaurant. But let's just say it involved those Breathe Right strips and narcotics. But
yes. Hey, the full circle moment right there with the story that I was telling. No, it's my one of my goals of this podcast, especially these Friday episodes that we do at Mason, is to make it feel a little bit like a conversation you might be having with some friends or some strangers that you get to know at a bar. And that's why I like the background music, no matter what it is. It just adds to the feel that we're just sitting at a bar having a good time.
And if you were here, it would be a different sensory experience because we do have a couple of cervezas on the table, and we can also smell the smoke from...
I'm getting ready for those tacos.
Yeah, because they're getting set to serve some tacos. So we do appreciate Mason Ale House. If you've not been yet on Logan Avenue in Barrio Logan, phenomenal place. I love this neighborhood. Every time I get off the freeway, it makes me happy to be here. Every time I ride my bike through here, it makes me happy.
Parking sucks, but everything else is great.
Parking can be a little bit of a challenge. There's a trolley stop not too far away.
Yeah,
I think it's a good location. If you want about a mile walk to Petco Park, I think this is an absolute ideal spot for you to get a little bit of exercise. Come here, plenty of great food, incredible culture, tremendous history in Barrio Logan. And Mason Ale Works is right here on Logan Avenue. They do have tacos in the back. They have this big outdoor space. They have televisions everywhere. So if you want to go out and watch sports, Padres are in Atlanta, I think, this weekend for a 3-game series. They're in Atlanta. Today's Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
I think the Braves are getting Ronald Acuna back this weekend, and I'm sure that the Braves are thinking, hey, we got swept in the first 4 games of the regular season. Padres haven't played well, maybe a little bit of blood in the water for the Atlanta Braves. I know baseball doesn't really work that way. It doesn't work that way at all, but things aren't going great right now for the Pods, and they're heading into a place which could present a little bit of a challenge, and I'm sure the Braves would absolutely love to just keep their heads underwater here for the next couple of days. So if you're thinking about watching them while they're out, while they're on the road, come on out here to Mason Ale Works. They have great beer and, like I said, great food, and it's a phenomenal neighborhood. I do love every time our pal Justin Lipford plans a bike ride through Barrio Logan. It's one of my favorites. Speaking of mental health, our guy Justin.
Yeah.
Just such a solid guy working for the YMCA.
Yeah.
Yeah, checking in on everybody all the time. Solid dude. But yeah, you put it out yesterday, John. I don't know. I mean, should we transition into sports?
We could talk a little sports.
Because like I said, the Padres have had an impact on some people around town.
Yeah.
I don't think Emily was just bluffing on social media that she had to skip the show. There are lots of people like, this impacts my day.
So,
like these sports, we can laugh, but if it is an escape and it's not making you feel any better, I understand people like, I got to walk away from this. I come here to get away from whatever it is, family or job or relationship, and this isn't making me feel good either.
No, let's go backwards and we'll full circle this for a second because we had that great conversation with Ben kind of after we were done, and I want to say now what I said to Ben, which is sports to me has always been a good way of calibrating my emotions, maybe even regulating my emotions, because I'm not a super emotional guy in real life. I don't get too high. I don't get too low. You can call me boring if you like, but I just kind of stay in this area of like, I can be a little grumpy. I can be a little happy, but you're never really going to see me exuberant and screaming unless it has something to do with sports. And that's just the way I'm wired. And we could go into the therapy reasons and, my childhood and all the reasons that I built a personality, put up these walls, these emotional walls to not get too high or too low around other people because everything that I was going through as a child. But sports is where I get to live that out. And even like video games, like this even, like Madden sports video games do this to me too. But some of the happiest moments of my life where I'm just screaming in joy have come from sports. And some of the moments that have dragged me down and made me want to cry have come from sports. And that's good. That's healthy. Like those are muscles that I'm flexing when I do that so that I know that I can do that and I can survive, right? I can be so far down. I can be at a place where I want to weep about this loss. And then I can wake up the next day and move on with my day. That's a healthy thing to experience and to move on from. And so, yeah, I love sports for that reason. And actually, there's a buddy of mine, I don't know if I want to give his name out because these were some sensitive conversations years ago we had, told me he was very similar in that in his day-to-day life, he did not get too high or too low. He tended to be like a steady guy. But when it came to sports, he was real, like, if the Padres won a game in May, he was high. He'd feel great for the rest of the night. And if they lost, it would, like, ruin his day. And I was like, man, you got to stop letting the Padres just control your emotions like that. And he was like, no, that's like, it's good for me. It's the only way I get to live out those emotions. And so someone like Emily, who you mentioned, it's like, you look at them and you're like, man, really? Are you like, you can't get through, a segment on the radio that you want to listen to?
Right. Based on 6 games out of 162?
Based on 6 games in May. But also for some people, like the Padres are not their outlet for entertainment. It's their outlet for emoting. It's their outlet for experiencing emotions that they don't otherwise allow themselves to experience. And so in that regard, it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. You want to take a break from the show because it's bringing you down to a place that you don't want to be until maybe the game tonight, with hopes that it could turn around. You could be really happy. Sure, I get that.
Yeah, and I think for me, like a large part of, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm in sports media because of my dad. And you talked about your dad, and I've talked about
that.
Yeah, well, sure.
Okay.
And I've talked a lot about my dad and having to fly back and forth to the East Coast all these times that I did over the last couple of years. I always remember when my dad was, he was, I don't remember what year it was. I have a picture on my phone of watching a football game, a Chargers game with my dad. The Chargers were playing the Falcons, and my dad knew I loved Rivers, so he loved Rivers. So we had that in common.
That's sweet.
And so when I was a kid, my parents were divorced, and the times that I would spend with my dad were mostly him watching sports and being excited about sports.
Yeah.
So as I got a little bit older, there really wasn't a ton that I had in common with him. We're not on the same wavelength at all politically. He was sort of in and out, based on similar things to what you were describing, not as hardcore.
Yeah.
Other narcotics though, and alcohol and stuff. But the one thing that we could always pick up a conversation on was sports.
Yeah.
So lie on the couch, tell me why you're in sports media. That's probably why.
Same.
Because it was the thing that I really wanted to connect with my dad about most was sports. So even to this day, that's why I always wondered too, if he had passed away over the last couple of years, like, would I care about doing sports talk radio? Probably not.
Oh, really?
Because in a way, I think I was probably doing it as a result of trying to figure out a way to communicate with my dad, right? So, he hasn't, and I'm not doing sports talk radio.
Yeah.
So, just as a concept, that's probably not necessarily the case, but I did think about that. I was like, when he was really, really touch and go, I really thought about that. Like, if he does pass away, because I knew it would make him happy. I knew he would sit around in Florida and he would pop up the iHeartRadio app and he would play it for his friends. And he would tell his friends his son was some big deal in San Diego.
I mean, that's
even
cool.
though it's like I'm a D-lister in this town at best.
But that's got to feel good for you.
Totally, and it made him happy, and it gave him something to talk about. Lots of people go around and they're like, oh, my son's a doctor, my son's a lawyer, my son's this, my son's successful, my son does, and for him it's like, oh, my son's a sportscaster out in San Diego, and since he was sitting around and shooting the shit and talking sports anyway with all of his buddies at the cigar shop in Port St. Lucie, it just became a thing, right? So even when I was not real happy doing it, I wanted to continue doing it because I think it made him happy.
Yeah.
So, it's not like the last couple of years of my radio career were the happiest, but, you just sort of do it because I'm in it and, there's this other element of it. But that's something that crossed my mind. Anyway, not really the point. So, I had this picture on my phone when I went and visited him. And Chargers did something ridiculous. They scored late, maybe won in overtime. And I have this picture of my dad in a hospital bed, and he's got both of his arms up in the air. He's got, the breathing tubes, all this sort of stuff. And I always remember, like, wow, what a moment that was to be able to watch. That's why I've gone back for the last couple of Super Bowls to watch with him, just because, even though it's total taboo in sports radio to take off the day after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I would get really bizarre looks when I would put in for that request.
Yeah.
The reason I would do that is because it might be his last. And if I'm going to watch, I want to watch with him.
Your priorities were in the right place.
Right. Even though, like I said, in sports radio, that is as big a no-no as you can get. Taking a day off at the Super Bowl. What? Nobody does that.
Yeah, you can do 3 hours on that game alone, Darren.
I was like, well, let somebody else come in here. You can hire a fucking monkey to come in here and talk about the commercials.
I love the fact that you don't give a shit about the easy days. Like, I have this quote. I don't even know if you know this. I tell people this all the time. You used to walk into the 1090 studios, and I had the office right across the street from the studio. And so you'd come in, and before you even went into the studio, sometimes you'd come right in my office. And I remember you coming in. What's the deadest time of the year?
February.
You would come in February, and you'd walk right into my office, and you go, this is why they pay me the big bucks. This is why we get paid to talk about sports when there's fucking nothing to talk about.
I used to say it all the time. This is where you separate the men from the boys.
Yeah, anyone could talk about, anyone could do 3 hours of radio the day after the Super Bowl.
Anybody can do that.
Good luck in February.
Yeah, and I remember talking about that, again, and I don't know that I really showed a vulnerability on the radio, and I talked about, okay, I'm going to be a little vulnerable here and talk about what it meant for me to watch this regular season game with my dad.
Yeah.
Chargers and the Falcons, just because, like I said, he knew I liked Phillip, and he's like, oh, I love Phillip Rivers, he would always shit talk the Chargers and stuff like that. And I remember
like any good Charger
talking
fan.
about how I literally said, I'll be a little vulnerable here, and I got a text from Peter Seidler, who said, I love it when you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I always remember that, Peter sort of planting that seed about being a bit vulnerable. I don't know how we started talking about the weekend series with the Padres and the Braves and got back into this. But, I think it had something to do with sports or why we're in sports or sports broadcasting. I don't remember at all. But, yes, sports. I think my wife sometimes has to be reminded that even for as even-keeled as I can be, sometimes they have an impact on me. And big time. I am more impacted than I probably let on by some of the things that happen. I'm not saying this about Wednesday night with the Knicks. But it's funny. You talked about sports giving you some of the most euphoric moments of your life and some of the the moments that are at the worst. I actually thought about this for us to chat about, and I'm ambushing you with it, so it's okay if we don't want to do it.
Fantastic.
What are the top 5 most devastating losses that you've had to deal with as a fan? Is that a list that you can come up with?
I thought we were going positive.
I can probably give you a little bit of time and rattle off some of mine, but mine would be Game 7, 1994 NBA Finals.
Yeah.
John Starks. I would say Barcelona losing to Liverpool in the second leg of the Champions League, because I was going to Madrid for the Champions League final, and we were a goal away from me watching a team go ahead and win at a level that I had never seen before. Game 163, Padres and Rockies, because I was there.
That's on my list.
And I was in that clubhouse afterwards, and I will tell you to this day, I've been in losing locker rooms for the Super Bowl. I covered the losing locker room between the Ravens and the Giants in Tampa in whatever year that was. I covered a losing locker room clubhouse for baseball, World Series, 99 Braves. I've never been in a clubhouse or a locker room in my life that was as devastated as that one in Colorado in 2007. I would put that on the list of emotionally crushing events for me as a fan, and also I was working it. That would be 3.
Wait, we have some overlap here.
Yeah, I would say, last year's NLDS is kind of on that list.
Yep, we have lots of overlap here.
Game 5 there. Now, for me, also St. John's losing in the Elite Eight to Ohio State. St. John's losing back-to-back years to Duke in the regional final really had just planted the seed of hatred for Duke for me. So, that's one that I don't know that I'm devastated to this day, but I'm definitely, I'm still angry about that. Those are ones that just pop to me off the top of my head.
It's funny you said angry, because I'm like, I wasn't angry at any of these. I was just hurt emotionally by all of them. But game 163, last year's NLDS was bad. Hilariously, the Champions League game that you were at,
the Liverpool and Spurs.
Yeah. I mean, we were just riding such a high. Mm-hmm. We felt inevitable. It felt like it was destiny. And then it was like really quick. It's like, no, this is not destiny. You're destined to fucking lose here. And then the ones that you didn't mention, although maybe you'll be able to help me with one of these. Both of the times that the Nets lost the finals, I think to the Lakers both times, or was the Spurs one of those times?
I thought they lost to San Antonio one year.
Yeah, I think it was San Antonio one year, Lakers the other year. Definitely the Shaq Kobe Lakers. Those.
It didn't matter that those were total mismatches?
No.
Okay.
Just because it was like the Spurs thing. You felt a little bit like Team of Destiny, and then it was like, oh, never mind.
Right, because I wasn't here when the Padres lost either World Series in 84 or 98, but they also felt like mismatches a bit. But I suppose when you're in it, you always have a chance. And that's why those aren't on my list. I have to go more with personal experience. I don't want to come across like some sort of fraud here.
Well, no.
And tell you that 84 Padres, I was 12 years old and I didn't live here.
The 98 Padres series I was at, I remember being like watching the Yankees celebrate on the field in front of me that they had won the World Series and being like, well, this sucks, but this also, like, this season gave me so much fucking joy that it's okay if it's imperfect.
Right, journey more than destination.
Fucking 13 talking about journey more than destination. But the one that sticks out in my head, the one that pops up in my like dreams, the Knicks and the Nets played a playoff series against each other probably in like 95, 96.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
And I remember sitting in the audience at Continental Arena or whatever the thing was called at the Meadowlands. And I remember like there was the end of the game and there was a player on the Nets named Chris Morris. And if Chris Morris just made these 2 free throws at the end of the game, the Nets win. And I'm pretty sure they like go up in the series, take home field advantage. Like it was great. And he missed both of them, just not even close. And the Knicks win the series. And he was just like, we're never going to be able to beat the Knicks. They're always going to be our big brother. We're never getting past them. And it's kind of like, last year with the Padres and Dodgers. Like, it just makes you feel so small and irrelevant. And that one hurt. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah. I actually thought you were going to talk about when Marbury broke his wrist. But, yeah, that one stands out to me as well.
The Marbury team didn't feel like it was going anywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I swear, I know it was 30-plus years ago, but I do remember... I was mentioning somebody not being able to listen to a radio segment today after a 6-game losing streak. That was pretty much me. Like 94 Game 7 Knicks was like a profoundly impactful loss. Like profoundly impactful for me. I wasn't in the business yet. I was a fan. I was lifeguarding. I was bartending. And like I had shaved my head because all the Knicks were shaving their heads. Like I had done all of that sort of stuff as a fan, if you could believe it. That one did, and the game 163, again, it just, being in that clubhouse, I can never, ever forget the feel of being in that clubhouse in Denver, Colorado. But it was just a little different because I had to talk about that one the next day. You had to do it, but like just as a fan, like raw emotion, like cut to the bone, I am figuratively bleeding here. Like, man, that 94 game was just the worst.
You know which one hurt me the worst? I left it off my list. I'm going to add it. It's number one. Number one with a bullet. Because at the time... So this part of my connection with sports is not just my dad, but it's also my grandfather and my uncles, right? I love my uncles and my grandfather as much as my own father for a lot of complicated reasons, good and bad. And we used to have a thing. Every Sunday, we'd go to my grandfather's house, my dad and all of my uncles, and we would watch the Chargers game together. And I moved to Philly when I was 21, and I'm living there, but I'm watching the Chargers. That's when I started Bolts from the Blue. I was in Philly running Bolts from the Blue, and the Chargers make it to the AFC Championship game against the Patriots. And I remember I got on the phone with my dad when it was they won the game the week before, and my dad was like, if you want to come out here and watch it with me and your grandfather and your uncles, like, you can stay with me, blah, blah, blah. I bought a ticket. I flew out to watch that game, the Marlon McCree game. To this day, any Charger fan in San Diego, you say the words Marlon McCree and they'll like crumble. And I just remember like being like, I flew out specifically for this game, and I'm like, this is going to be like magical. It's going to be the best sports moment of my life. And it was the worst. It was the worst one.
I'm glad you brought up the Chargers, because I'm sure for people that are listening that are longtime Charger fans, whether they are or aren't any longer, and I suspect most of you probably are not.
I'm lapsed.
I'm sure that seems like it's a little bit of a blind spot for us in this conversation. I understand the impact that had. People to this day will tell you, had you won one of those games, had you been able to push across and get a Super Bowl, maybe they're still in town here. And for a lot of people, I think that's probably pretty devastating. I don't know that would have been the case, but it might have been. It might have been. We'll never know. And I do think that's at least part of the calculus of the disappointment when it comes to the team itself. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I meant to say we probably should. I just never had that connection with an NFL team, and I never had that connection with the Chargers. So what we're talking about here is not one of the most devastating losses in the San Diego sports history.
Yeah.
It is one of the most devastating losses to Darren and John.
Yeah.
And to us personally, how it had an impact
on our emotions.
Those had that had a major professional impact on all of us here in town, because who knows what happens had they won some of these games. Even if you want to argue that we're better off today than we were when they were here, it still created a ton of memories, and they were really popular. And
I disagree.
Yeah. So, are we a more balanced sports market? Yeah, I think you can make the case. Do we have MLS here? I don't know. But none of that is really worth spending a ton of time on, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I do remember, I can remember that Jets loss too, LaDainian Tomlinson's final game.
Was that he's in the helmet on the sideline? No, that was the year before.
That was the AFC Championship game.
Was that really?
That was the AFC Championship game where LT sat there with the visor on.
Yeah.
Gates got hurt. Rivers had no knee. And Tomlinson had some sort of situation going on with a calf, I want to say it was.
Until my dying day, I will remember the newspaper, the sports section of the San Diego Union-Tribune that day, the morning of the AFC Championship game, had this great cartoon of Gates, Rivers, and Tomlinson all injured, heading into battle like they were Revolutionary soldiers, like playing a drum and whatever. It was great. This is great.
Yeah, but some of those losses, absolutely. I mean, the Chargers figured out a way, a new and unbelievable way to break hearts, it felt like, every year, you know, and we're just talking about our era of covering them.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other examples. Fouts 5 interception game.
There's also
they've inflicted a lot of damage on the psyche of sports fans in San Diego.
Right, but we're not crazy. There was also the positive side of that, right? The Billy Volek overtime win in Indianapolis against the Colts, the Darren Sproles play.
Darren Sproles walk-off.
Yeah, that might be the loudest I've ever screamed in my life.
Well, it's funny because we just did like top 5 most impactful losses.
Negative,
for us. I would tell you top 5. Again, not that I was some dyed-in-the-wool Charger fan.
Sure.
I'm very open about that. Like I know what it meant to the city, and I cover them.
Yeah.
But it was mostly for me, and I liked a lot of the players, and the players treated me well, and I just was never.
You don't have to be a fan.
I never connected with the NFL.
Yeah, you didn't need to be a fan.
And I connected with a lot of players on that team, but I will tell you, like if you're gonna say, give me your top 5 best sports moments of all time, the Sproles walk-off would absolutely be in my top 5.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate, not just here in San Diego, but through ESPN and otherwise. I've been very fortunate to be I've been at Super Bowls and World Series and national championship games and Final Fours, major golf tournaments. And I would tell you, in my top, and personal things, El Clasico twice in my life, that's crazy. I would tell you that game, being in the press box, feeling the stadium shake, is in my all-time top 5 most memorable sports moments. And again, I'm saying that as somebody who has no emotional connection to an NFL team, and that was in my top 5 all time, being in that press box and feeling that sucker shake.
Am I crazy? Wasn't that game in Indianapolis?
The Sproles one? No.
Oh, really? That was a home game?
It was at Qualcomm.
I did
The
not
Billy
realize.
Vola game was...
Oh, those are separate games.
Those are separate games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to say the Sproles game was the 8-8 season, where they beat the Broncos. The Chargers beat the Broncos in the final week of the regular season to sneak in, and then the Colts didn't win their division because I think the Titans won their division, and everybody started bitching about the fact that the Colts had to play on the road
That's right.
as a 12-win team with Peyton
Now I
Manning, and the
remember
Chargers
this.
at 8-8 beat them, and then the Chargers, I think, and I might be wrong about this, they went on to lose at Pittsburgh the next week. So,
Yes.
but they did provide that one amazing moment, which again I think goes down as one of the great moments in San Diego sports history. I'm probably being hyperbolic, but certainly in my 20 plus years, that will go down as and over my 25 years in this business, again, as somebody who has covered Florida State, Virginia Tech, Michael Vick's final college game, I remember being in the Superdome. It was just an amazing experience. That would be in my top 5, easy, like. Easy top 5 for me. Just an incredible environment that night at Qualcomm State. But anyway.
Can I tell you a funny story about that? Because you just reminded me. So a couple months after that game, it's like March, maybe like April, and I was out in San Diego for some reason, and I was at a bar, and at the time I was a smoker. You remember me as a smoker. And I'm outside, I'm smoking a cigarette, and outside this bar, there is Troy Polamalu playing with like his kid outside the bar while like obviously like friends, maybe family are inside the bar. He's like, I'm gonna take the kid outside, play with the kid outside the bar. And I'm sitting there and I finished my cigarette and I walked up to him and I was like, hey, is anyone in San Diego giving you shit? Because like he was such a thorn in the side of the Chargers, him and Ben Roethlisberger and that Steelers team. And he looked at me, he's got the big flowing hair, like it wasn't in a ponytail, and a big flowing hair like down his back. And he looked at me, he goes, you're the first person who recognized me. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Or maybe I was the first person who wasn't, too scared to go up and say something to him. But yeah, you reminded me of that because that Steelers team was just really hard to get past.
Sports, man. Well, we're going on almost 50 minutes here, and you and I had other things that we wanted to talk about. I don't even know if it's worth diving into some of this other stuff.
Like
STFC tomorrow against LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
It's a rematch.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of stats. You and I thought a segment about today, Friday, being the final day ever for Around the Horn on ESPN, a show that I did not realize lasted 23 years, that this was something that we should discuss. We have the Padres in Atlanta. The U.S. men's national team is struggling to get some of its star players to show up. Good for Luca De La Torre, but...
Wait, no, talk to me about that. We can talk about that, because then I want to lead into... You were thinking about maybe we'd put your Luca Bombino interview on the end of it. So let's talk a little soccer. The SDFC LA Galaxy matchup, to me, can be covered in about 30 seconds. The Galaxy are the defending champions. They're absolutely terrible this year. I read an article by somebody, I think it was the one I put in front row seat that BN Sports did, where I think it was Mikey Veras or someone from SDFC, maybe even like Tyler Heaps, was like, hey, they went for it. They went for it last year. They won the cup. They're terrible this year as a result of pushing in all their chips last year. But they raised a cup. Good for them. But yeah, they're absolutely terrible this year. And SDFC should absolutely get 3 points out of this. And if they don't, I think it's going to be disappointing. Kind of like last week when it was disappointed that they left with 1 point instead of 3. But I know nothing about this U.S. men's national team story. Tell me about that.
The game makes me nervous, I will say real quick, the Saturday game for SDFC, because Galaxy is playing a little bit better. They've scored 4 of their 12 season goals over the last 2 games.
And you said different keeper? Did they change keepers?
They have swapped out their keeper from where they were earlier this year. I feel like it's an ongoing conversation, but it'll be really cool for people to go to the game. And I heard it's a crowd of about 30,000 people. I heard about 600 Galaxy fans are making the trip, by the way.
I'm glad it's only going to be like 70 degrees. It's not going to be like 90.
But Galaxy's played a little bit better, and they just extended their head coach. So now he doesn't have to worry about getting fired.
That was
as
interesting.
a result of being 0 wins, 10 losses, and 4 draws. He doesn't have to worry about that, so he can play. They are not going to come in here and do what Kansas City did, though. They're not going to come in here and kind of just shut it down and play for a scoreless draw.
Yeah.
They're going to come in here and they're going to try to score. They're a possession team. This is going to work well for SDFC. There's going to be goals in this game, and I say that not exactly climbing out on a limb, because Galaxy are the only team in MLS that does not have a clean sheet yet. So,
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, they're the only team that has yet to shut out its opponent, and it's not going to start on Saturday. That much I would say. 33 goals allowed. I'm guessing SDFC will put a couple in net, but I think it's going to be testy. And again, like their head coach got extended, so they can play a style that he's not going to get in trouble for. He's not going to get fired for.
Yeah, I thought that.
And
was
they don't
really...
have the luxury of coming in here and trying to play for a draw. That's not really where they're at. They need a win.
They definitely need a win.
They need a win. But what's happening is, and you always have to be careful because if Christian Pulisic is hurt, and there's some reports that he's got a chronic hip injury.
Yeah,
he's been getting injections, and he's played a ton. I think it's 120 games over the last couple of years. Christian Pulisic has played.
Jesus.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And if he wants to skip the Gold Cup, which is a continental tournament this year, it's debatable for me.
Save himself for the World Cup next year type of thing.
I don't want to be on the wrong side of Christian Pulisic is just asking out of a tournament because his priorities are all fucking weird.
Yeah.
If he's dealing with something that's chronic, and then you have that thrown back in your face for people saying, do you realize that other players from other countries would chop off a leg for to go? Probably, but
can I ask a quick question?
We're not those countries. We aspire to be those countries. It's just where this conversation gets a little bit tricky.
My quick question, very quick question. Pulisic came up as a young phenom. Looked good on the U.S. men's national team. He plays in Germany?
He plays in Italy now. Started in Germany, played a little bit in England, won a Champions League with Chelsea, and now he's playing for Milan.
Is he still proving himself to be one of the top strikers in the world?
Yeah, he's been really good.
Okay.
He's been arguably one of the better players that his club has. And again, he's played a lot. But for U.S. men's national team fans, we've seen him perform not exceptionally at Copa America. Nobody played well there. Crashed out of that tournament. Greg Berhalter got fired. And we saw them not play great in the Nations League, a tournament just a couple of months ago where they finished 4th out of 4 teams and they lost to Canada and lost to Panama. And you're hosting a World Cup next summer. And there's only so many competitions that you have left. There's no World Cup qualifying, so you don't have to play with the pressure of qualification. This is the only remaining tournament where there's any sort of stakes whatsoever.
Yeah.
And to have him and Jedi Robinson and Yunus Musa and other players sort of go, I think I'm going to take the summer off. I think is certainly making putting a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths about what the commitment level is from some of these players, or whether there's something systemically just wrong with U.S. soccer across the board, which I think is also a fair part of the conversation too.
That's a continuation of the conversation we had. Got all the bar sounds going on. That's a conversation of that's a continuation of the conversation we were having a few weeks ago. Where was it? Bob Bradley, it wasn't Bob Bradley, was it? Who was saying that Pochettino not being an American?
That was Bruce Arena.
Bruce Arena, right? Do you think that that's a factor here?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's sort of a challenge. Like, well, what is Pochettino going to do?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Not play Christian Pulisic when Christian Pulisic makes himself available?
It's a good point.
Like, what are you going to do, Poch? You also, let's remember, Pochettino sort of set this tone by not having some of the star players play against Mexico. Granted, it was a friendly.
Right.
But it was bad message for me as a fan. I hated that message. And since then, we've seen them crash out of Nations League, which is, granted, a gimmicky tournament. And Copa America, not Copa America, but the Gold Cup. I think I may have said Copa America earlier. Different tournament.
Yeah.
But the Gold Cup is being played this summer. It's a tournament with stakes. It's a continental championship. And I feel like here's the whether you want to blame the system, whether you want to blame the tournament, whether you want to blame the players, or if you think everybody shares a little bit of the blame here. I think the thing is, you want to be ramping up for the World Cup next year, and it feels like the U.S. is shrinking instead of ramping up excitement. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen some highs and lows when it comes to U.S. soccer, and it feels like we're in a real valley here when it comes to the level of interest in U.S. soccer. Now, let's see the way Mexico approaches this. Mexico's calling up Chucky Lozano, and Chucky Lozano will run to the Gold Cup so that he can be back into the squad.
However many walls he has
and part of the selection of El Tri. He's going to run through that.
Yeah.
And, understandably, the circumstances are different between him, between Pulisic. But it certainly, everybody's going to have a jaundiced eye at some of these U.S. soccer players who are like, what do you mean you're not going to play in this tournament where you're playing in a competition for pride?
Last question for you. Does a continental tournament with a cup and all that, does it mean more now than it did when America considered Canada and Mexico to be friendly allies? Does it mean more now?
Probably to them.
No, yes. But, in that way, does it mean more to everybody?
Yeah, I thought, anecdotally, Panama probably took great delight in beating the U.S. men's national team,
Absolutely.
not just because, but because they have to hear about annexation of the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
And I would think that Canada, finishing ahead of the United States was probably a pretty big deal, especially with an American manager.
Yeah.
So, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge for Pochettino, who, again, every day that goes by, I don't think this was the right choice. But, that he can't get some of his star players to show up or give a shit about this tournament, I don't know, man. It doesn't give me a ton of confidence that we're going to go ahead and have any sort of real success at the World Cup coming up next summer.
All right, let's. Do you want to throw to this Luca Bombino interview you did, and we'll head into.
Is that
our
your way
weekend?
of saying this truck is probably going to disrupt the listening experience for some of us?
I think it'll be okay, but it is starting to just annoy me as the person who's sitting in front of it. So yeah,
all right,
let's get to our weekend.
I chatted with Luca Bombino. He's an 18-year-old defensive player. He's on loan from LAFC. He's been in the LAFC academy since he's 11 years old. He's from Santa Clarita. He is a great kid. I had some apprehensions about interviewing an 18-year-old because, what do I have in common with an 18-year-old? But I thought he was fantastic. He started 3 straight games for SDFC. We'll see if he's starting again on Saturday. But Luca Bombino, who has a really, really bright future, has been described as a natural leader and has been an impactful player for SDFC. Had a chance to chat with him. Here you go. It's SDFC Midweek Live on San Diego Sports 760, the iHeartRadio app. I'm Darren Smith with you, and it's our opportunity to get a chance to meet Luca Bombino. It's not been long, but we've certainly been impressed by everything that we've seen. Luca, you've been off to a tremendous start with SDFC. Thanks for doing this. How's everything going?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time too. I'm having a great time. Can't complain. I'm enjoying life, enjoying football, and it's been really exciting. I'm excited for the rest of the season. So
take us back to March 8th. This is your MLS debut. You come in as a substitute. I don't know how many of these details you even remember. 73rd minute, Franco Negri. Tell us what that moment was like for you.
It was surreal. I've been working towards this moment for as long as I can remember. You would expect a lot of nerves going into it, but on the sideline warming up, I was ready. Mentally, I was ready to go in and make my impact. So I'm happy things went the way they did. And, it was just preparing for that moment, I think, was more important than the moment itself. So I'm really happy with how it went, and I'm happy with my development since that point as well. I'm just excited for another opportunity to keep building this weekend, and I'm excited to go again.
Do you remember the details? Do you remember things that were said to you right before the number goes up on the board, or is it all just sort of a blur?
I remember being told to be at the front post for corners, and that was about it. It was all kind of a blur, honestly. But then going in, I was locked in. Couldn't really hear the crowd much. My family asked about that too. Were they heckling you? All this stuff. I don't remember. I was locked in on this moment and just making the most of every touch I had.
Who do you have to thank for getting you to that point? Who are the people in your life that got you to the point where there you are? You've been a pro for a few years, but here you are making your MLS debut.
Well, for sure, my family. They've always supported me through every step, even in the hard times. My dad for the countless hours in traffic to and from training. My mom for staying up late with me, making dinner. My grandfather as well, pitching in for those long commutes. But, even all the academy staff, countless names I can't even begin to list. But everybody who's played a part in my journey has been huge. So I've always had a big community supporting me through this journey. And it's not just me playing, it's all of them too. So.
You're 18. I've seen you in a previous interview say that you pretty much have had a soccer ball at your feet since you were 2 years old. Tell us a little bit about your life, early life, and the influences that got you interested in football to begin with.
Yeah, I have an Italian heritage. So growing up, my dad, my grandfather, my mom, all big into football. Soccer games were always on TV. I remember waking up early in the morning to watch Juventus games with my dad with my little jersey, and I couldn't really stay awake for most of them. My dad was waking me up for every goal, but yeah, I mean, it's always been there. It's always been the focus of my life. It's always been the thing I wanted to do with my life, and I'm really blessed for the opportunity to do it. I'm just so grateful with how things have panned, and I really want to make the most of every step going forward.
And so it was Juventus. That was the club growing up. Were there particular players that you loved watching when you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was Paulo Dybala was my favorite. I know I got to watch a little bit, but not a lot of Claudio Marchisio as well. Andrea Pirlo, Del Piero, all the big names. Chiellini, who I actually got to train with a few times in LA, was pretty surreal as well. But yeah, I mean, all the big Italian players were idols in the household. So.
I want to ask you the mentality of a defensive player like yourself. Here you are. You've mostly been left back, but we've seen you do a little bit of both. Speaking of Italians, right? Carlo Ancelotti, the great manager who's exiting Real Madrid, talked a little bit about defenders are either optimistic or pessimistic, and he said he loved having a pessimistic defender because they worried about things that could go wrong. I don't know that this is something that's ever crossed your mind, but what is the mentality that you take out there onto the pitch with you when you're getting set, whether you're in a starting role like you've been recently or whether you're coming in as a substitute? What is the mindset for Luca Bambino?
It's all about striking a balance, and it's also what the game calls for. If you can see that your side has more of the attacking presence in the game, then it gives you a little more freedom to go forward and be optimistic. But if you can see that your team really needs you to tilt around to the right side and just lock things down and be a tidy left side, it's all about being balanced in knowing when to go and knowing when to stay, and really having pride with every defensive action you take, because that can rally the team around you and build momentum towards going forward. Having a lot of pride with every tackle you have, getting the crowd up and cheering for those, especially, those can sometimes be more exhilarating than a goal, especially for a defender.
Yeah, it's an interesting mindset, right? I don't even know that crosses people's minds, that there's a way of looking at it that you can be optimistic or pessimistic. Does that make sense to you, that mindset?
Of course, yeah. Having a pessimistic mindset is really important for a defender, because that's your job. You're there to make sure when things go wrong, you can clean up and give the attackers another chance to go at goal.
I've seen also in other interviews, people have referred to you as a bit of a natural leader, and here you come in now, 8 matches into your MLS career, your pro career, and you're around some great leaders, right? The captain, Yeppe. We've got 2 captains for national teams, and Paddy McNair and Anibal Godoy. I wonder what you, who's been described as a leader, through different levels of your own career up until this point, what you've learned about the leadership of those kind of players since you've been here in San Diego.
Yeah, I think the number one thing I've picked up on is not only the vocal leadership, but also leading with the body language, taking care of your own individual actions and showing the team that you're there, you're prepared for the match, you're ready to take matters into your own hands, and you can get the job done for everybody else, and that will inspire the rest of the team. You can see, especially with Yeppe, his cool, calm, collected mentality in the midfield. That sometimes sets the rhythm. Anibal with a strong tackle, 2nd minute of the game. It's really important for the players of the team to not feel only inspired by your words, but also your actions. I think that's the biggest thing I picked up.
How glad are you that the club has picked up another 18-year-old? Just, so that you have somebody that you can consider a contemporary, since you're both the same age, you and Oscar Verhoeven.
That's great. We're good friends. We've played together in the national team a few times. Getting him acclimated to life here. I know I've only been here a little bit longer than he has, but I feel like I introduced him to the squad, which is kind of funny. But yeah, no, it's been great. Not only him, Alejandro, Alvarado, Ian Pilcher, Anis Saidi, we're all the young guys of the squad. The older guys like to pick on us and have us do some of the tidy work. But
like what? Like what sort of tidy work do you guys have to do? Like carry cleats and things?
No, I mean, just basic things like, hey, somebody dropped a sheet. Go pick up the T-shirt, You're 15, you have a better back than we do. I'm not. I remember Pablo Cisniega on the first or second week I was here. He thought I was 15 years old. I don't know how to take that, but I like to think I've matured more in his eyes since I've been here. But yeah, I mean, having Oscar here, having the rest of the young guys here, it shows the club's willingness to play players no matter the age. It gives us a lot of confidence, especially on the field.
Yeah, and obviously, and I would say take it as a compliment for now. I had one of those baby faces once upon a time a million years ago. Now I don't feel that way when I look in the mirror, so enjoy it while you can, even if it gets a little bit annoying. But obviously, you're doing something right. 3 straight shifts of 90 plus minutes there. We talked about how difficult that week was. What are you learning about yourself now, just based on how the club has trusted in you, most recently with the 3 matches and 3 90-minute shifts?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about my own mental fortitude. It was very difficult for me to move on from matches in terms of just moments that keep you up at night. You know, like, oh, if I just made this pass, things would have been different. If I had gotten this cross right, you know, all of those things, especially with a quick turnaround like we had last week where we had 3 games in 7 days, 8 days. Mentally wiping clean and starting fresh for the next game was really important. And I feel like I handled that well. So it's a lot of work, not only physically, but mentally. And I feel like I'm making good strides, but I know it can also be better because right now I'm thinking about that Sporting Kansas game, but working towards wiping fresh, getting ready for Galaxy.
Well, there you go. Should be a fun one on Saturday afternoon. We all look forward to that as well. Luca, have you ever had teammates with another Luca before? Or is this a first for you and Luca De La Torre?
No, this is a first. It was definitely...
How does everybody know which Luca you're talking about?
They just call me Bambino. It feels weird to hear Luca here now. When I go home to my family and everybody's calling me Luca, it's kind of weird now because I see these guys more than I do my mom. Yeah, but I'm Bambino on the field here. I don't mind it. I've gotten used to it. It's not bad. Yeah, I mean, having Luca... It's weird. Like, I feel like when I tell Luca to go and press, I'm like, Luca, go. And I'm like, am I talking to myself? Should I go? Yeah, it was okay. There was a period of adaptability at first, but it's okay.
Good. Well, I know you're going to talk to Sal Zizzo here a little later on. His family owns a restaurant in Little Italy. You talked a little bit about your Italian heritage. Make sure that he gets you a good table next time that you have the family in town and you guys want to go out for a meal, okay?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Luca, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time.
You got it. Lambino, and we will be back. It is the SDFC Midweek Live Show on San Diego Sports 760 and the iHeartRadio app.